We were looking at jail safety, and safety means safety of the people working there, safety of the inmates, and safety of any public that may be in the area temporarily.
So ultimately we found that the Sheriff's Department is not following leading practices, and in some instances it's not following its own policies and procedures.
Our office heard the concerns of the people of Denver regarding the ongoing issue of use of force within the jails.
We recently completed an audit of jail safety at the Denver jails. There had been done, I would say in 2014, 2015, a pretty comprehensive look at the jail system in Denver. We have followed up on pieces of it, and in our follow-up, the whole issue of jail safety really got our attention, and that's why we embarked on another audit of the jail system. What we found was that the jail really needs a more systematic process to identify risk, to implement strategies to mitigate those kinds of risks. And absent that, the organization is at risk of not achieving the overall objective, which is safety of the inmates, safety of the personnel that work in the jail. There was a key finding that had to do with the safety around high-risk inmates. The national standards say that those types of inmates should be handcuffed behind the back.
In one instance, the audit team watched as an inmate handcuffed in front of his body lunged at a deputy in a threatening manner. This led to a use of force incident.
The recommendation around, restraining high-risk patients behind the back when they're being transported or moved from one place to another, they actually did not agree with that, and they felt that their practices were adequate. We think the national standards say otherwise, and certainly would still encourage them to take another look at that.
Though the Sheriff Department has received accreditation through the American Correctional Association, we see that as an initial first step. That's why we made recommendations to improve department operations as well as make the jail a safer place for everyone involved. We selected the National Institute of Corrections standards because they are recognized not only by the department themselves, but also by corrections and jail facilities across the United States at the federal, state, and local level.
Having a systematic way to go about assessing risk and how to implement strategies to mitigate those risks are important, because on average there are 5 incidents a day where sheriffs having an incident with an inmate or an inmate having an incident with another inmate. That gives rise to the need to have a safe environment for everyone. Keep in mind, the Sheriff's Department doesn't have control over how many people come into the organization, doesn't have control over their behavior, and the Sheriff's Office doesn't have control over the kind of turnover that they may have in their staff. So those present a lot of risks within the whole organization. A systematic way to identify the risk and to implement strategies to mitigate those risks across the organization. And we think that that's the way to go about assuring that we have a safe jail for both the inmate population and the sheriff population. Well, that's it for this episode of Ask the Auditor. And if you have a question you'd like to ask the auditor, you can submit it to auditor@denvergov.org. And maybe next episode of Ask the Auditor will answer your question.